All right. Okay, now we're live. All right, great. We had a little false start, and I was taking a sip of coffee and was really startled because, like, oh my gosh. But we're live now. And hello, everyone. Happy Webinar Wednesday to you. Thank you so much for joining us today to learn a little bit about how to edit your story. So I see that several of you have found the chat. Always excited to see that. I know. Yeah. So hey to Kristina, who is joining me today. We've got a little bit of a Brady Bunch thing going on. My picture's like stacked on top of yours. So yeah, that's right. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Hop in the chat. Tell us where you're from. How are you today? Last week I asked about pumpkin spice flavors. So if you want to answer that, feel free. But tell us what you're working on. Do you have a work in progress? Are you here because you're actively editing or you're actively trying to learn how to edit? Those would both be appropriate things to bring you to this webinar. So a couple housekeeping things to get started. You have found the chat. We also have a Q&A only tab. So as Kristina is going through, she has graciously offered to answer questions at the end. So you can drop your questions in the Q&A chat and we'll pick those up when she is done with her presentation. As always, we will be recording this session and posting it to our YouTube channel. So everyone who registered will receive a recording of the presentation, and it'll be posted to our channel as well. So 2 ways to watch. If you do have to leave early or you join late, we have got you there. So what are we doing here? Why are we here today? What is bringing us to this place and time together? To learn how to edit. So today we are learning how to edit a story. So of course, I don't need to tell anyone who's on this call how important it is. Editing is so important, especially to the independent, to the self-published author, to understand the basics of editing. So we're going to learn that today, but be sure to take notes. This is not a passive webinar where you just listen in the background. This is an active workshop. There's a lot that we're cramming into this hour, and we're really excited. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I won't take any more time. I would like for you all to give a warm welcome to Kristina Stanley, the founder of Fictionary.
Yay! Thank you for hosting today.
Yes.
And for giving me an opportunity to talk to everybody about story editing. So we're going to talk about how to edit long form fiction. So basically novels. And this is something near and dear to my heart. My whole company is based on this. So I'm going to tell you just very quickly, tiny little bit about myself, and then I'm going to get right into how you story edit. I'm also going to share one of the manuscripts I'm working on right now and show you a bit of live editing so that you can see how I look at my manuscripts or how I edit somebody else's manuscript. So with that, Chelsea, just confirm I went to my next chart of who am I?
I see who you are.
Perfect. Okay. Oh, you know what? I'm not in screen share or slideshow mode. There we go. That's better. Okay, that is me. All right, so who am I? So I founded this company called Fictionary. I am also the CEO because, well, you know, I founded it. So I got first title. My first title was actually Chief Creative Officer, but apparently that was, you know, you have to be a CEO. So there I am. I'll tell you a little bit about Fictionary as we go. Basically, it's a company that supports writers and editors in helping them tell better stories. I'm a best-selling author and I've won some awards, and this is how I got started in editing. And I started out writing, but really my passion is editing. I'm a member of Editors Canada because, well, I'm Canadian, so that's the one I joined. I'm a story editing advisor to the Alliance of Independent Authors. And if you haven't heard of them, they're a great organization that supports writers. I have a degree in computer mathematics at Carleton University, and I also have a postgraduate certificate for creative writing. And so what I did with Fictionary, I put all of my education together and my writing career together and combined it into Fictionary. And the other thing to know about me is I raise and train guide dogs puppies. And this little thing of cuteness down here is Candy, one of the cutest puppies ever. And I think that was day 2 that we had her. Pretty much of a handful, but beautiful. Okay, so that's everything you need to know about me. So Fictionary, we're about writing better stories. So how do we help people do this? We have a free online community, and in that community, it's full of writers and editors, and it's a place where writers can ask trained, certified editors, story coach editors, to any question they want about their manuscripts, their blurbs, their synopsis. It's really active. Then we have training. We have 2 types of training. We have free training in our community from our editors to our writers on how to edit. And we even do some live editing sessions where brave writers put up a piece of their manuscript and it gets edited on the spot. We also have a certification program for editors where we train them properly how to edit story. We have 2 software products, Storyteller for writers, and this is for a writer to go in and do a story edit on a novel. And then we have Story Coach for editors, and this one is for professional editors to edit somebody else's manuscript. Fictionary.co is our website. And just for this webinar, we're doing a 25% off coupon for Lulu people, and it's just Lulu25, and you can go to Fictionary.co and try a 14-day free trial. So that's the end of that. Let's go right into what is story editing. So this is the point where people usually like to start taking notes. And we called story editing not structural, not developmental, not substantive, not line editing, because these are all really confusing terms. And when I started, I found it really difficult to know. And what I wanted to know was how to make my story better at the story level. And so we've called it story editing that encapsulates bits and pieces of all of those types. What it is not copy editing or proofreading. That comes later after there's a story. So story editing, it's a structural review and revision of your manuscript. So 2 keywords there, review and revision, and it's looking at the high level picture, and it's focusing on characters, plot, and settings, and the overall story you're telling. So this is the definition we're going forward when I talk about story editing. Okay, so why would you want a story edit? Well, you want to answer 3 main questions. So at this point, when you're beginning a story edit, congratulations to you, you've got a draft novel written. It doesn't have to be a finished draft, and it won't be a finished draft at this stage, but you have the semblance of a story, and you want to know, do you have a story? And this is one of the most important questions you can ask yourself early on in the editing phase, because without a story, there's really not much point in doing too much scene by scene editing until you've got a full story structure there. And I'm going to explain what that means. Once you have a story structure, then you want to know what should you change, and you need a process to do that, to figure out how do you look at your own manuscript and know what should you change. And then finally, how do you know when you're done? So these are the 3 buckets that I'm going to cover today, starting at the big picture level, moving down through scene level, and then hooray, you're finished your story edit and can move on to copy editing, beta reading, whatever it is that's next in your writing process. Okay, so before you begin, and this is really, really important, create a skeleton blurb. And you say, what is a skeleton blurb? Well, it is as stating who's the protagonist. So whose story is this? So when you're writing a skeleton blurb, this is just for you. It's not for anybody else. It's to have as reference while you're editing. So you're always focused on editing to the same thing. So who's the story? Whose story is it? Question 1. And what is the story goal? So you have a protagonist, that's the main character. What is their main story goal? And if you think of the back of book covers, or what you see on Amazon, the blurb for the book, it's a nicely, perfectly written book. But if you look at the good ones, it's who's the protagonist, what's their story goal, and what's at stake. So if the protagonist does not achieve the story goal, is there something at stake that the reader will care about? And if you can put these 3 things together, super simple, before you start your story edit, you've got a place that will keep you grounded in your intent for the story. So I'm going to quickly go through a blurb for one of my books, and then I'm going to show you these key things in it. Okay, so the blurb goes like this. After her husband and dog die, Jazz Cooper, a woman with a debilitating fear of crowds, discovers she has a special connection with dogs and draws further away from human interaction. But when she discovers her husband was murdered, she must fight her need to hide and use her newfound skill dogs to search for the killer, only to learn the new ability might get her killed. And so this is a little bit more than the 3 words, but I thought if I just put the 3 lines in, it'd be hard to pick out of here what I'm trying to get at. So in the first line, we see right away, Jazz Cooper is the protagonist. This is who this story is about. Everything in the story is from her point of view. It's a single point of view story. And Her goal in the story goal, is to search for the killer. And what's at stake? Well, her life is at stake. So these three things pop out, and it will keep me now when I'm editing to remember she's who this story is about. This is what she's doing, and this is what's at stake for her. Okay, so we'll talk very quickly about what is a protagonist. So this is a really deep subject. I have a full webinar on just what is a protagonist. So we're going to use a very easy description today. And that is a main character who pursues this story goal and has the most to win or lose. So we get back to the protagonist, what's their goal, and what are the consequences. And if you're having trouble finding your protagonist, look for who has the biggest challenge in the story. And that's typically the protagonist. There's many ways to find a protagonist, but it's good to do some soul searching. If you come into our community, you'll see there's a free ebook on what is a protagonist, and it goes through this in detail. So if it is an area that you want to do some more learning on, that's a place to go. Okay, so where do you begin a story edit? And where do you end one? Critical questions, because you do want to know when to end. So the first thing you want to do with a story is look at the story arc. And the story arc is going to answer the question for you, do you have a story yet? And it sounds really, really simple, but a story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And at the end, the climax must answer the story goal. Positive or in a negative way, it doesn't matter, but it must answer that goal. And when you get your story arc together, you will know that you have the fundamentals of a story. Once that's done, then scene by scene editing starts. And scene by scene editing is looking at every single scene and evaluating it against key story elements and looking for what should you change. It's not changing it yet. It's just looking for what needs to be changed. And after editing, you get to the revision process, which is where you make the changes. And then you can look at a story arc and a story map, and I'll show you what these are. And these are going to tell you if you're finished. Are you done? So have you done enough work that you're confident enough you can go off to beta readers, or it's time for a copy editor, or whatever you might want to start designing a book cover. That's always really fun. Okay, so the story arc. This is the story arc of Beowulf, and I chose this one because it's such an old book, and at even way back in history, this is the fundamental form that books follow in a story. Now, you can, of course, write books that don't follow this form. This is not meant to be followed exactly. It's meant to give guidelines. And so in this story, the inciting incident, and I'm going to explain that in a minute, is where Beowulf was chosen a warrior. And it happens at about 10% in. General guidelines are you'd like an inciting incident somewhere between 15% and earlier, or the reader gets frustrated because nothing's happened, and particularly nothing related to the blurb. Beowulf kills Grendel at around 25% of the novel, so it's dead on. I mean, you can see again, there's a range there. It can come earlier or later, but it needs to be in there somewhere. Then Beowulf kills Grendel's mother right in the center. At plot point 2, Beowulf learns his home is being ravaged by dragons. So that's at 73%. Perfect landing. You can see it's a little bit, the blue line there is a perfect story arc, and the orange line is the what the story arc is for the actual book. And then the climax at the end is Beowulf fights and kills the dragon. So it's a classic story arc that is giving you boundaries to work from. And when you have this nailed and fully understand this, you can then do whatever you want, because you know that why you're breaking the rules and what you're doing. And you know, the artistry comes after really learning the craft. Okay, so I am going to just stop sharing just for a second. And then I'm going to go back to sharing. I want to just show you. I've lost the share button. Oh, there we are. Okay. Oops, there we go. Okay, Chelsea, can you just confirm you're seeing the app?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. So this is the Fictionary app, and this is Storyteller. That's our app for writers. And what we do to help writers with a draft is we import a manuscript right into Fictionary. And so what we're doing here, I'm just going to choose my manuscript here. This is one of my books, Look the Other Way. You can give it any project name you like. I happen to start every scene, every chapter with the word chapter. So we have different options on how you can format your book when it comes in. I use a scene break character between each scene, and I highly recommend that writers do this because when books are read on a Kindle, so now the app is importing my book. Anyway, so when books are read on the Kindle, you don't know where a page break is going to occur. And if it happens at the end of a scene, the reader's not going to know a new scene started and they might get confused. So we love the scene break character. Fictionary's just gone through and analyzed my manuscript. And you can see here now it's broken out into chapters and scenes. And I'm going to edit in this way. So this tells me I have 53 chapters, 98 scenes, and 79,000 and some words, which is very satisfying when you look at something. You think, oh, I wrote that. That's pretty cool. The next thing Fictionary does is it uses natural language processing. It pulls out a cast of characters, but we're just going to skip over this for now. What I want to do is show you the story arc of this book. And so when Fictionary imports your manuscript, it draws what it thinks is the story arc. And so the blue line here is the perfect one. The orange line is the green one. And so this can come in all over the place. This is pretty tight because I've been editing it. When I first started, the climax was way out here and my plot point 1 was way out here. So I wanted you to see just a visual. And now I'm going to go back here, stop sharing, and go back to my presentation. Okay, so whether you're using Fictionary or not, your first step in story editing is finding your story arc. And it can be a bit intimidating. If you're looking at a straight out Word document, it's really difficult to do, which is why we chose to actually draw it so that you can see it and have a starting point. So how do you find your story arc? You have to read through your whole book, which hopefully you love doing. And then you name every scene. I'm going to talk a little bit more about naming scenes in detail because this is a really important step to finding the story arc and to understanding the structure of your story. And then once you've named every scene, you can select which ones are the story arc scenes. And in Fictionary, you can change them around. So Fictionary comes with a proposal, and then you as the artist, of course, can say, no, it wasn't that scene. It was a different scene. So let's talk about what the key scenes in the story arc are. So to find your story arc, you need to know what the scenes are. So an inciting incident. This is the moment the protagonist's world changes in a dramatic way. And this scene must kick off the main story goal, which you've written in the blurb. So you'll know when you read your scene that kicks off the main story goal, you'll know it because you know what it is in the blurb, and it keeps you super, super hyper focused on that blurb so that you know this is what you're looking for. This can be the first scene in the novel, which is great. It's a little harder to write because you have to get in a very short period of time before the inciting incident happens in scene 1. You have to connect the reader to the main character, which is certainly doable. Just pay attention to it. The next thing is plot point 1. So this is somewhere between 20 and 30% of the book. And this is where the protagonist can't back out of the central conflict. And the reason this is important is that if they can, they would. And there's no story. So there has to be a reason. Why wouldn't they just walk away from the main conflict? And they must go after the story goal. And that's in the blurb, is the story goal. So you can see how I'm linking everything back to this skeleton blurb that you've kindly done for yourself. The next is the middle plot point, and this is somewhere between 45 and 55% of the book. And here is where the protagonist moves from reactive to proactive. And at this point in the story, some life-changing event happens. It can be super positive, which quite often happens in the romance genre. And so it could be a false victory in the romance, and then between there and plot point 2 that it's going to tank and not go very well. It could be something really negative, and this typically happens to go the other extreme in a horror genre. Okay, and then plot point 2, somewhere between 70 and 80%. This is when the protagonist is at the lowest point in the story. And at this point, what's important is that the reader worries if the goal will be achieved or not. They have to be second guessing whether the main character, the protagonist, is going to reach that goal or not. And the protagonist should be wondering as well. At the climax, the protagonist faces the biggest challenge yet and determines their own fate. So this scene must show if the story goal is achieved. So the story goal that's in the blurb has to be answered in the climax. And it doesn't have to be achieved. It maybe it's it's just the protagonist didn't make that goal, and that's the whole point of the story. And so you as the artist have to know what you're doing there. But one of the things I see when I'm editing novels is that the climax scene isn't related. It's a really exciting, tense scene, but it's not related back to the blurb, and that will disappoint the reader. And so when you're looking for these scenes, these are the 5 things that you're looking for, and then you're making sure they're doing the right things. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about what's a scene. So a very simple definition: a scene is a section in your novel where a character or characters engage in action or dialogue. So the character is just doing something, which is really important. They're doing something. A character sitting around doing nothing is boring. The character must do something. And every scene, just like the novel, has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And every scene has characters, plot, and settings. And we're going to look at all of these 3 things to show why they're each important, not only at the scene by scene editing level, but also at the high level novel structure of editing. Okay, so we're just going to do a little reminder of how to find the story arc. You're going to name every scene, and you can see on the right hand side here, this is just a snapshot from Fictionary of every scene has a name. And when I say name a scene, I don't mean in the text. I mean for yourself in a list so you can use it. It's not meant for a name that goes into your book. If you can name in 3 words or less, that's really good because it shows you you're focused on the scene. If you have trouble naming it, there's a problem with the scene. So when you name every scene, you should be able to pick out the story arc scenes as you're doing this. It tells you, the name will tell you what every scene is about. And it may seem funny because you wrote the book, but sometimes little scenes sneak in there and you think, oh, why is this scene in here? I don't know. It could be time for a cut. It helps define the purpose of a scene, which is, why is this scene in the book? Is it related to the blurb? And when you know that, then you know if that scene has actually earned their place in your story. Gives you an after draft outline. And editing and revision is such a huge thing to take on. And so if you have an outline of your book, when you move scenes around, when you're looking for a scene, when you want to double check, does this character know this event? Whatever it is, you can look up and down this list and find the scene that you want very quickly. So when you've done all of this, you will know if you have a story. If the answer to that question is no, then it's time for some revisions. And this is where you would go back. And I'll just use the climax scene. So say there is a climax scene, but it's not answering the main story goal. That scene needs to be rewritten. And then you have a story. Or say you can't even find the inciting incident. Okay, there needs to be one written, and you would add that in and complete your revisions before going on to the next step. Okay, so I'm going to just do a quick demo. Chelsea, just confirm I'm back in the app here.
Yes, I can see story arc demo.
Okay, perfect. So I'll just pop up the story arc here. And you can see this is the original story arc I showed you was my book imported. And then I did a whole bunch more revisions, and look what happened to my climax. It went way out here. So that's going to have to come back in. Within Fictionary, you can click on any of these and actually read a scene.
Kristina, I'm sorry, we're still seeing just the screen that says story arc demo.
Oh, so you're not, it didn't go. Okay, let me just stop and then I'll start that again. I don't know why that didn't go different Chrome tab, but we'll try it again. Okay, there we are. Okay, now are you seeing the story arc?
I am.
Well, that probably makes a lot more sense when I go, hey, look what happened with my climax. It's way up there. Sorry about that. This is a tricky thing with too many screens up to get them all showing. Yeah, okay, so this is my story arc. So basically what I was saying is you can read any of the scenes to see, just to remind yourself what it is. Basically, you can scroll down so that when you're here, you can get a good view. So at this point, I'm going to call it and say, yes, I have a story. I've got all my plot points. This needs a bit of work, but I haven't done my scene by scene editing, so things are going to move around a little bit. So I'm happy enough with this that I think, okay, I'm ready. One quick other thing you can do here, you can pick up characters and see when they come in and out. And here, Ashlyn comes in after the middle and after plot point 2, and you think, well, that's odd. Why do I have a new character here that isn't even carrying through to the climax? So do I even need this character? And you can start questioning yourself about your characters in your story. In the app, we have an evaluate page. And here you can see all my scenes are named on the side. This is where you edit your book. So if you want to make changes when you're doing, sorry, not edit, when you revise your book and you're doing your revisions. This is the 38 Fictionary story elements, and these are to evaluate every scene against. It seems like a lot, but once you get going, you kind of get the hang of it. If we look at the opening scene, here is Offer on the House, so that's my scene name. And I put inciting incident in my title, so when I scroll up and down, I can see where my inciting incident, plot point 1 is. And here within Fictionary is where, let's say this wasn't the inciting incident, I would just set that to no. And then I could pick up any other type of purpose I want, or I can invent my own purposes. I'll just leave that to yes for now. Okay, now are you back at Story Arc Demo?
We're still within the app right now, which looks lovely, by the way.
Well, thank you. That's lovely. I don't know why I keep having to stop sharing and sharing, but we're just going to go with that then.
It just adds to the story arc. It's okay.
It just adds. I'll go back to my Chrome tab here. Lulu. Okay, now you should be at the Story Arc Demo.
We're there.
Okay, good. So we'll get past that. So, okay, you have your story. You're totally excited. Yay. Go celebrate. It's an amazing moment. And then you can get to the second step. And that is when you start a scene by scene edit and you go through your novel from beginning to end and look at every scene and make it the best you can, because great scenes make up a great story. Okay, so I'm going to give you, I mentioned in the app, there's 38 story elements. I'm just going to cover a few of them because otherwise we'd be here for the next day. So I'm going to give you the key ones to get you started that you'll get the most impact on your story. And the first is, does every scene have an entry hook? Does every scene have a purpose? And does every scene have an exit hook? And these three things will improve the pacing and will improve the plotting. It'll tighten up your story. It'll also get you focused as you go through the rest of the story elements. So let's talk about the entry hook a little bit. So this is the part of your story that keeps the reader reading beyond the first paragraph or two. So you can see on the right down here, I've got entry hook. Why is Shannon hesitating buying the house? So this is just my description of what an entry hook is. I keep track of it here. And my recommendation here is when you do this, actually write down what the entry hook is. Just giving yourself a check mark and saying, yep, there's an entry hook. Great, I can move on. It's risky because maybe you can't. And if you actually have to write it down, it really, really gives you the ability to go, I do have an entry hook, or it's kind of weak, or I don't have one at all. And then the trick here is that you want to look at how close to the opening of the scene is it. It doesn't have to be in the first sentence, but it should be in the first paragraph or two, because that's the moment when somebody starts a new scene, they're like, oh, do I want to keep reading? Oh, I have to keep reading. And then they stay with your book. So what you're really asking yourself here when you check the entry hook is, does it start in the right place? And so if you had an entry hook that was down in the middle, revise the scene, move it up, and then you have it at the beginning and you've drawn your reader in and they keep reading the scene. The next thing is the scene purpose. And this is why the scene exists in your story. So why is it here? And it's an important question to answer. And here, this is what we looked at in the app. So this one is just set to, it's my opening image where I'm introducing Shannon. So this is why I want this scene in the book. And when you do this, if you can't answer this question, you have to ask yourself, is this scene needed in the book? Maybe yes, maybe no. And if the answer is no, is there bits in it you need in other scenes? You want to take them out and revise other scenes? Is there enough in it that you could revise this scene and give it a really strong purpose? Then yay, you get to keep it. If not, it has to go. Then we have the exit hook. So this is where you leave the reader wanting more. So here I've said at the bottom, will Shannon regret making an offer? So in this scene, she buys this house that she doesn't really want. And so if there's no hook at the bottom, it's another place where the reader can put the book down. And so you really want this flow going of why read the scene? Oh, there's a great purpose in the scene. Why read the next scene? And so what you're asking here is, does the scene end in the right place? And here again, you might have an exit hook, but it's too far before the end of the scene, in which case move it down. Or you might not have one at all, in which case add one. And so, and you can see like books that you're reading that are really fast paced. If you look at the opening scene or the opening paragraph and the final paragraph in a scene, you'll see an exit hook in every one of them. Okay, so now I have to stop sharing and share again. I'm very sharey today. And I'll go back here. So here again, this all shows up on the plot tab in Fictionary. And we have an entry hook, we have an exit hook, and we have tension. It's not tension, sorry. And we have a purpose of a scene, which is not set for the scene because I unset it. Let me just redo that. Okay, so what I want to do is show you how you use this overall in your story. There's a couple of things you can do. You can look at the purpose of a scene. And here I filled this one out following Save the Cat, just to see how my novel did against the Save the Cat beat sheet. And, it starts with setup, inciting incident, debate sequence, etc. And so I can see here the order of what my purposes are. There is a category, don't know yet, here, where if you don't know what the purpose is, don't delete it when you're going through your first pass at editing. You just want to leave it there because you might get to the end of your book and go, oh, I know what I could do with that scene. So all you want to do is keep track of the scenes where you don't know the purpose. If we look at, we have a story map within Fictionary, and you can do this in a spreadsheet too, where if I put the full story map on, it shows you every story element for the entire novel. You can see how much I filled out. Or you can look at things together. So you can look at, we'll just select none here. You can look at your scene name, and you can look at entry and exit hooks together, for example. And then you can look, do I have any? And here I've put, so scene 9, this is me keeping track of my editing process. So this is week. So I know when I'm doing my revisions, I want to come back and fix this. And I typically don't fix stuff as I'm editing because it really wastes a lot of time if you decide I'm going to cut this scene. Or the other thing is you want to make sure you don't have repetitive entry hooks. And so once you read your whole book, you'll have a good feel for that. And you can make sure you're avoiding those things. Look, I'm getting quicker at this. All right. Okay, so back to, now we're going to switch to characters. So that was a little bit about plot. And you remember we said we were going to talk about plot, we're going to talk about characters, and we're going to talk about settings. So here's the character. We're going to start with the point of view character. So this may or may not be your protagonist, but for each scene, it's the character who is telling the story at any given moment. And here's the trick with point of view. When you're first learning how to work in point of view, practice staying in one point of view per scene. And when you get the hang of it and you really know how to do it and have control, then you can switch point of views within a scene. But if you start out looking at one point of view, it's really tight. It's the easiest for a reader to understand and read. And it's the fastest way to connect readers to the character. So when we talk about point of view, all this means is everything in the scene is described from that character's senses. So what they feel, what they do, what they see, smell, hear, touch, etc. All from them. If they can't see it, it can't be in the scene. Otherwise, it's out of point of view. It's a promise to the reader. When the reader figures out, typically if the first name they see, they're going to think it's the point of view character. It doesn't have to be, but typically that's what happens. It's a promise that the reader is going to experience the scene from that character's perspective. So when you switch, it has to be done with care so that it doesn't jar the reader out of the story. So when you read your scene, did you keep that promise? So the first thing you do is you list the point of view character for every scene. And when you read it, are you in a solid point of view? And if you've changed point of view, did you do it well? All right, so now you have a point of view character. Well, they have to be doing something. If they're the point of view character, they're the character that has the goal for that scene. Even if they're not the protagonist, they're the ones who have a goal. So the external goal is just what they want in that scene. And it should be something, again, related back to the blurb. What's the main story goal? Is it related? And will it either make it easier or harder for the protagonist to achieve that goal? Got to be related to plot. There has to be consequences to a goal. So if a character has a goal to, I don't know, eat lunch, it's not very interesting. All right. So there's no consequences. I mean, if they don't have lunch, they're a little bit hungry. Okay, that's fine. So it needs to be something where by the end of the scene, if they don't get this goal, which quite often they shouldn't, you want to make sure that it's, there's a lot of tension throughout your story. But if they don't get it, something bad happens to the point of view character or to the protagonist. And in the scene, that point of view character should strive for the goal. They need to be active, moving, trying things, improvising. If they're doing nothing, they're boring. I'm just going to keep reiterating that. They must do something. Okay, so again, I'm going to stop sharing and share again. Oops, that's the Lulu webinar. That's right. Okay, so we're going to go back to the evaluate page and have a look at the characters. So what we talked about is Shannon's got the point of view, and her goal here is to get a new job. So at this point in the book, she's been fired. Her fiance is cheating on her. She just bought a house that she can't afford. And so her goal in this scene is she needs a new job. So on point of view, it's really important that you decide who's got the point of view. And what this is here, I just clicked on the point of view character insight. And what this is showing me is in my book, I have 4 points of view. My intent is 3. So I've got this Charlie Smith guy who's got 2 scenes and he shouldn't. And so I know as a writer, I have to go back. What often happens at the beginning when a draft is pretty rough, there's a lot of point of view characters. And the goal is to get it down. Game of Thrones is one of the most complicated books and it has 9. So that's a lot of point of views. I usually recommend 7 to 5. I want this book to be 3. And so this shows me here, Shannon has the point of view for 49 scenes. Jake has it for 41, the boy 9, and this Charlie guy 2. So I have to fix that. Down here, down here, this shows me the order. So that's Shannon, this one's Jake, this one's the boy, and it shows me the order. And this is just telling me as I'm updating point of view, have I done them all or not? And then I can come and look at it. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, so we did plot, we did characters, and now we're looking at settings. And really what we're looking for here is, did you choose the best location? And the reason for that is the setting has a massive impact on how the scene plays out. And what this means is that it's setting the emotion for the scene. It's setting the tension for the scene. It's setting the visual aspects of the scene. And the method and length of time spent when you're describing a location, it makes a difference between a boring and an exciting scene. And so the overall recommendation is you list every location in the book and you look at, Are any of the scenes too repetitive? Should you get rid of some of them, change them to a newer location? You're also looking at if a setting is really important to the story and the story goal, back to the blurb, then more time should be spent on describing it. If it's, I'm meeting you in a coffee shop, we all know what a coffee shop is, less time. Sci-fi, fantasy have to spend more time because they create a new world. Historical fiction typically spends more time because people who read historical fiction like all those details of this setting and what people are wearing and etc. So with setting issues, and here's just a little, this is inside of a book that had a few issues with one scene, but there can be too much or too little description. And this is based on how important is what's being described. It can be unclear where a scene is taking place. And this is frustrating to readers. So that every scene start, the reader has to know where are the characters. If the description is not consistent with the point of view character, and what this means is, as you can see, I train guide dogs. So I'm a guide dog person, or a dog person. I love dogs. And so when I am in a park or downtown, I'll see a dog, but I won't see all the people there. I won't see cars. I'll see the cars, but I couldn't tell you what, maybe it's a blue car, but I couldn't tell you what type of car because I have no interest. So if there was a scene and I walked out and said, oh, look, it's an Audi, blah, 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 that would be out of character, not consistent with my character. If the location is a cliche, so break up in a restaurant, very cliche. And if the locations are too repetitive, so same place, same place, same place, same place, and there's no reason for it, and they could happen other places, it will make the book more interesting. So this is my last screen share. Okay, so we're going to go and have a look at settings. And so here, as I've gone through and looked at every scene, I've put in my settings. And you can see here, for example, I have an object, and it's really important to the book. So the note I gave myself during editing for when I revise is put this object in action. So the main character is doing something with it or interacting with it, and not just it's sitting there on the side. The other thing I noticed about my writing when I went through this is I don't use smell, and I also don't use taste. So I'm underutilizing 2 of the 5 senses. So when you see everything together, you can go, oh, that's a problem. And now I know I have to go back and look at the senses and look at how I'm using them in my story. This one here, not sure, means, is this the best place for emotional impact? I'm not sure. And so I'm going to think about, could I rewrite that scene somewhere else? And to do all of this, what I'm doing is working in the setting tab, and I'm filling out, here you can see I added the smell. This is me going back and rewriting. I need to use a smell somewhere. So I'm trying to figure out how to put it in and make it related. And so as you go, you can look and think about these things. Okay, so now we move on to how do you know when you're done, right? So we got when you start, you do your story arc, you make sure that you have a story before you start your scene by scene editing. When you're done your scene by scene editing, you make you've made a revision plan. So as you go through and you're making notes on your book, you're making a revision plan. And that way, when you do your edits, it's much more efficient. You're not wasting time editing things that you're going to cut, change. So it's a great way to have a really organized process. With your revision plan, then you revise your scenes and the structure. So now you go through and you go back, and you can do this in any order. Some people do the easy stuff first because they feel productive. Other people like to tackle the hard because it's going to change the structure of their book, etc. But what's really important after you've done your revisions is the story arc still strong. So if you've gone through your revision plan and you've updated each scene as best you can, and the story arc is still strong after you've moved things around, you know you have a story and you're done with story editing. And that's when you go, yay, take a break, celebrate, and then think about what you're going to do next with the book. Okay, so that's it on all the story editing stuff. I just wanted to talk about the Fictionary community a little bit. So we have an online community, and it's full of writers and story editors. And we train all of our story editors. They're all certified by Fictionary, and they're in the community to answer questions. And so we have a lot of writers who just put up in our Ask an Editor Anything session, they put up maybe their blurb, or they ask questions about a particular scene, or they're struggling with point of view and they want to know some guidelines around it. And our editors answer, which is get your questions answered. Just talk that over myself. We also do free live editing classes. And we do a couple of types here. We have lots where people bring a piece of their work and we edit through it live, or we'll do sessions, blurbs, synopsis, whatever. And their classes are usually sort of 10 to 30 people come, very active. And of course, you can ask an editing expert anything. We also have the Fictionary Book of the Year Award. So our 2022 award is closed. We are about to announce our shortlist for that on Saturday. So we're super excited about that. And then we're having a conference, an online conference in February, which Lulu's coming and presenting at. Thank you, Chelsea. And there we're going to announce the winner. And then we'll also have a follow into the 2023 Book of the Year Award. And it's for the best unpublished best unpublished adult novel or young adult novel. So we have two categories this year. So you can join at fictionary.circle.so. It's totally free. You don't have to be a Fictionary subscriber. It's super fun and active. We love having more writers and editors in there. And then I'll just end with a quick reminder. And these are my guide dogs. I just like to pick them up because they make me happy. That there is a discount if you want to try a Storyteller at 25% off, and the code is Lulu25. And I'll stop there and we can go over to Q&A.
Yes, thank you so much. I love the dog pictures always. Very exciting and adorable. Not my favorite takeaway from the presentation, but you can't go wrong with peppering in some puppies. So thank you so much. So I'll just invite everyone to drop any questions that you have in the chat. We've got a little bit of time left today, or the Q&A. We've got a couple questions already. But Kristina, I just want to thank you. This tool is so robust. I just feel like it's a home run. I mean, when you use this, can you write a bad story when you have all these check marks in place? So thank you so much for walking us through that. And so Joanne has a question, and I think this refers to the way that the story arc is measured against, that we have the template there. And I had to Google this word actually, but is there a denouement? So that the end of the story, is that, I think, Joanne's question.
The resolution. Yes.
Yes.
So yes, there is. That's just a hard word to say. So I like the word resolution because I can say it better. And yes, that's everything that comes after the climax. And so that's automatically there in the story arc.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you for that question, Joanne. And aloha to you, Joanne. And so Jill is asking, does the app work for nonfiction works as well?
Yeah. So I'm going to say two things about that. One is it works on narrative nonfiction. So if you're telling a true life story in story form, it's a great way to do that. And if you think of books like Moneyball or Seabiscuit, ones that have been hugely popular and turned into movies, it's because they follow the story arc pattern and they edit a story in that way. We are going to add in a full out nonfiction, and we don't have it right now, but I have a co-author, Lucy Cook, and her and I have just finished a book called Editing to Success, and it'll come out in early 2023. It's just gone to our coffee editor, but we wrote it in Fictionary just to test it out to see. And we actually wrote it to the story arc, and we put entry and exit hooks in our nonfiction scenes. And the reason we did that is because we are trying to go that next step with nonfiction. I mean, I can't say everything would work for like a math textbook, maybe, but
it'll be the most
I don't know. Maybe you want to tell us
textbook ever if you're able to do that.
I know. Maybe more people would take math if you could do it, but so we're working our way to it.
Great.
That was a very long answer, sorry.
No, it was very exciting, and it's great to hear. I've asked that myself. I mean, a lot of our authors at Lulu are nonfiction, so very exciting to know that that is in the pipeline. And so I'll do a last call for questions. If anyone, I know that several people have been asking if a recording will be sent out, and it will. This is recorded. It will be on our YouTube channel, so keep an eye out for that. We'll send out an email to follow up. We're getting a lot of feedback that it's very cool. The program looks great. I definitely agree with that. Tanya says fiction would be great. So this is fiction. So I think if you have a fiction novel, you're good to go. Go ahead and get started. So I do want to ask, for someone who is not familiar with the editing process, would you recommend they just dive right in with Fictionary, or would you recommend they kind of come to the workshops or the webinars, or just kind of go in full hog?
Yeah. Well, it depends on the person, because everybody's different. This is what I've learned in my journey in Fictionary is everybody learns and writes and edits in a different way. The best time to come to Fictionary is if you have a draft written. And that, I mean, in Fictionary, the software, because it's giving you a place to start when you have no idea how to story edit. And when you come into Fictionary, if you subscribe, you have full access for free to our masterclass that takes you through the whole thing. And so it teaches you as you go, and writers love to learn that. The other thing is, come to the community. If you're looking to learn, it's an amazing place to learn things for free, that you just come in and learn stuff, ask questions. There's a lot, there's just so much there to actually learn. And then I didn't show it, but in the app, we have a basic mode where you can just turn off and only look at 15 of the story elements. So if you're new to editing, start with the 15 and it does the basic ones for character, plot, and setting. You don't have to do that whole overwhelming thing. And we have lots of writers who do that. And then once they've done that, like, okay, I've got that. This is great. I'm going to go to the next level and go more in depth on my book.
Perfect. And I don't think that
everybody has to be kind, and it's great to critique, but it has to be in a helpful, thoughtful, kind way. And people who aren't kind have to have a discussion with me.
Which doesn't seem terrible because you're a great person to hang out with. But yes, I just wanted to make sure that we plug that, because I think that's such a wonderful foundation for especially a community where you are asking for and receiving feedback. Is let's be kind. Let's all help each other.
Yes.
So thank you for answering that. Jenny has a good question. She says, I feel this is very helpful, a helpful model for novels, but she is working on picture books and a play. So could this be applied to playwrights or authors writing picture books?
No, and the reason it's so different, right? It's a completely different art form that, it's really, at this point, it's really meant for novels. Okay. I would love to be able to do plays and children's books, but we're just not there yet.
Yeah, well, and thank you for that question. And so Tanya said, my connection cut out, I meant nonfiction. So yes, nonfiction would be great. So we're all excited to hear that. So I'm going to do one last call for questions. And then Kristina, tell us where to find you on social media. I know you obviously shared the website, but is there a social media channel that Fictionary is active on that we can go check out as well?
Yeah, so we're the story editor on Twitter. LinkedIn is Kristina Stanley, is just my name. We're on Facebook, but really just to be on Facebook. That's not where I would recommend you go. It's just, we're just there because we have to be there. That's all. That's a terrible thing to say, but there we are. And I mean, the real thing, I'm in the community every day. So it's just the best place. We're all kind of gravitating there and sort of moving a little bit away from all the social media stuff. And then LinkedIn is my next best place to contact me.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And, social media is there. It can be a helpful tool, but I think if you can have the community and move away from it, then that is the way to go. So I commend you for that. We're not going to encourage anyone to be on Facebook. So that's fine. All right. Well, Tom is coming in with one last question. Tricks to get attention of publishers. So when you've gone through Fictionary, you've got the story tight, it looks great. What would you recommend the next step be after that to get the attention of the publisher?
Yeah, I love this question. Thank you, Tom. Just set me up for that. That is just yay. Okay, so two things. One, we have some really successful authors who've gone through Fictionary who have gone on to had auction house bids on their books. Simon & Schuster, Penguin, lots of the big publishers, gone on to awards, bestsellers, after they've gone through Fictionary. So we're super proud of that. That it's very exciting to us. We stay really connected with our writers, so we know what's happening in their lives. The other thing that we're doing to help writers get attention is with our Book of the Year award. One of the prizes is a full manuscript read for the winner from Writers House Literary Agency. And they are one of the top agencies in the world. So they're doing a read through. They're coming to the conference to present. They're also going to do a 25-page read through of the next 4 who made the top 5 shortlist. And so we're super. Some of our writers have had success at writing conferences because they meet an agent there who then takes them forward to a publisher. So it's another source where you can go to a conference and the agent will read. You get basically 15 minutes or 5 minutes or something. You get this tiny little slot with an agent, and you got to go in and pitch your book, right? So that leads to the next thing. You have to be good at pitching your book, which is really hard. So you need a log line. What's your book in 25 words, 20 words, 12 words, something. So you have to be able to do that to be able to pitch your book, and you have to get access to people you can pitch your book to.
Yes, the elevator pitch, so important. And then, of course, as you mentioned, any awards or accolades that you can put to your name or by your writing is obviously very helpful to kind of give you the edge out over everybody else who's looking for that opportunity.
That's a great thing to say too, of course, because that is how I got my publisher, was through 2 different awards with 2 different books.
Oh, wow.
And then I got a publisher. So it's funny, I'd forgotten about that. That's really smart. Do that.
Yeah, well, thank you for that question, Tom. And yeah, just go out and win some awards. Easy peasy. There you go. All right. So I think that we are coming to the end of it. Thank you, everybody. Jenny said, hearing your talk makes me want to start writing my novel. Me too. I know. As I was sitting here listening to this, I was like, gosh, it seems like it's Fictionary just seems to really make it fun. And a really, like I said, foolproof way to really tighten up the manuscript. I mean, I think hiring professional editors is so important, but the more you know, the more you're able to do on your own. And I love what you said in the beginning is you have to know the rules before you break them. So you don't want to just, hire somebody and spend oodles of money, just give someone your manuscript and hope that they, that it comes out okay. You need to know, you need to get it as far down the line as you can before handing it off and know what you're looking for, which is great. So Kristina, thank you so much. Thank you everyone who tuned in. I just so appreciated this presentation. As I said, we have recorded it. It will be on the YouTube channel. You can find it again. Please check out Fictionary. Check out Kristina. Any last words, Kristina, before you go off to play with your puppies?
Yes, editing is fun. It should be fun. Make it fun. It's part of the artistry of doing your book. It's fun.
Yes, put the fun back in editing or whatever.
Put the fun back in editing. Do it.
That sounds great. Well, hey, thank you, everybody.